There's two brutes in here with us.
I'm down.
Today we are taking a look at the Anacrusis, a game by Stray Bombay, and many thanks to them for the early key to preview the early access version of the game. The Anacrusis is certainly pulling no punches. It is in essence Left 4 Dead in space. The whole feel of the game is very Star Trek original series, 60s sci-fi, crossed with the Left 4 Dead we know and love. Some of the team are obviously from the Left 4 Dead team, and that is quite apparent in many aspects of the game. Now I'm going to start this little review by saying that I made an error of judgment. I had assumed that there would be plenty of testers playing and other people doing reviews, so I only asked for one key rather than 4 initially. Now, full credit to Stray Bombay here, they have very kindly given me 3 extra keys so I could get some friends to try it out in multiplayer, and that is why this review is a little late, so I apologise for that. As always, if you're enjoying this video, please hit like and subscribe. It's free, guys. It really helps out the channel with the YouTube algorithm stuff. And also, if you don't like it, feel free to comment why, or just leave a comment in general, because that's good too. Now, with all that said, let's talk about the game itself. First, let's talk about what is probably the most important piece of tech in the game, in my opinion, the AI Director 2.0. An advanced version of what Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 used. It controls every aspect of the game, from the enemy horde and special spawns to item spawns and ammo points appearing on the map. The director learns as you play and decides how good you are and attempts to constantly challenge you. As a result, the game has no default difficulty setting, but just learns as you play and adjusts it to match your playstyle and how good you are. The beauty of the AI director is that it's not just learning how you play, it's learning how everyone else plays. It's constantly studying how people run the maps and adapting and learning how people play, so it will only get better over time as more people play the game. But let me give you an example of how it works. So if you're doing badly, it will lower the spawn rates, it will move items into the main path so they are easier to find. If you start doing well, items will start to appear off the path, in side rooms, in an attempt to slow you down, and more groups of specials and hordes will spawn. Enemy waves can also spawn behind you in areas you've already cleared and chase you down. And much like in Left 4 Dead, there are also those periods of silence where you're just waiting for that next horde to come and grab you. And there are also sections where you can set up, knowing that pressing that button is about to set off wave after wave of aliens. Currently, each time you play the map, the layout will be the same in terms of how you get from point A to point B. However, other things will move, spawns will change, a point that was quiet will suddenly be loud and a slog to get past. Did you have a nice little corridor to hide in last time? This time you won't, you'll be stuck out in the open and the fight will be completely different. The other exciting aspect of all of this is that the variables that govern the AI director can be changed on the server on the fly, so they can make adjustments without needing to do massive game updates. Overall, I would say that my experience with the AI director was really positive. It knew when I was doing better. Okay, so when I played with the AI did not cope well, especially in the big final fights. But that wasn't the fault of the director, that's because the AI need work, and the team know that. I will say the team made a fantastic dev blog talking all about the AI Director 2.0, which I'll link below, and you can check that out in your own time. But let's move on. Space, the final frontier. Very final for the amount of times you're going to die, or at least the amount of times I died playing this game. Space is a fantastic setting. It allows for both massive open areas and also much smaller spaces to be crafted by the dev team. The Anacrusis has narrow corridors, massive open rooms with amazing vistas of space, rooms that actually look like you're standing in space, and even massive indoor gardens with fake sky ceilings. It also has the potential to allow exploration of planets, not just space stations or ships. As a result of these very different environments, it encourages completely different playstyles in different areas of the map. The other beauty of doing something in space allows you to completely detach from reality. This is a crazy 1960s looking sci-fi show. It does not have to be totally realistic. It just has to be fun. Its use of bright colours in both environments and clothing make it a nice place to be, when you aren't getting smashed around by a brute, of course. Unlike the Left 4 Dead games, or for example Back 4 Blood, it allows the game to be a bit more extreme in nearly every aspect, without needing to lean on any form of reality such as real-world guns, etc, etc. That said, the dev team have acknowledged they've tried to take physics into account. For example, they don't have fragmentation grenades because little bits of fragments hitting and piercing the side of the ship could potentially depressurize the section you're in. Now, when it comes to the story, not a lot is presented in the game as yet. Each episode has a small voiceover blurb at the start, sort of explaining what's going on. It feels a little bit like this is a placeholder for something more in depth and maybe some little videos that'll be coming during the early access period. But in essence, something went wrong at the edge of space, aliens took over the ship, and you play one of the 4 survivors that are rather unwilling combatants in the fight for humanity's survival. The 4 characters you can play as are Nessa, Guyon, Liu, or Lance. Much like Left 4 Dead, they are all the same in terms of their skills and abilities, but they all have their own personalities and will have their own clothing unlocks and things like that. With this being early access, we don't know a lot about them yet. What I can say is, much like Left 4 Dead, they have this ongoing banter between the characters. Though the little conversations are not very common yet, I fully expect a lot more voice lines to be added during early access. But that's about all I can say about the story and characters at this stage, but I'm sure we'll be getting a lot more of that during the next few months. Okay, let's get on to some of the good stuff. The aliens and the specials. The standard horde aliens, or humans with some form of headcrab, are pretty much standard mindless charging zombies, headshot kills in one, and a shotgun in a corridor is your friend. On top of that, you have a wide array of specials. One of the more familiar will be the Brute. With their version of a tank, it loves to charge and jump in on you, then pin you into a corner and smash you over and over and over again. They hit like a truck and have the health of a tank to match, and dodging their charge is an important skill to learn. Then you have the Spawner, probably the most annoying of the specials, not in a negative way, just the way it behaves. It has the ability to spawn 3 turrets at a time. These are initially balls that roll up near you and extend into a 3-headed turret that spits out yellow balls, doing an impressive amount of damage if you don't keep moving. The spawner stays out of sight in side rooms, behind objects, on different levels. If you want the turrets to stop, you have to hunt down and kill them, which obviously comes with its own risks. Now I will say, at the moment, of all the enemies, the turret looks the weirdest. They don't quite fit with the other aliens, but I suspect they might get a slight rework in how they look. They just look a bit too smooth in their texture compared to the other alien creatures. Next we have the Gooper, which does exactly what it says on the tin, it goops. Firstly, if the massive loogie hits you, then it will lock you in place, unable to do anything until someone shoots the goo off you. The secondary effect is that the goo spreads all over the floor, slowing down you and your team massively. Then there's the Grabber, which you will remember from Left 4 Dead as the Smoker. Yeah, this is basically the same mob. A mob that stands way at the back, throws out 2 extending tentacles that pierce through you like barbed hooks and drag you back. Much like the Smoker, your team need to kill the Grabber to release you. The final one currently in the game is the Flasher. Likely the most frustrating of all the specials, it blinds you with a yellow light. It's unavoidable and the only way to stop it is to kill the damn thing. Which, when you can't see it or hardly see anything else, is a nightmare. Now there's one other enemy that's not really a special per se. They are eggs, lots of musical spiky eggs. These things lie dormant in your path. Ideally you want to get past them without waking them. Otherwise they puff up and roll at you over and over again, doing massive amounts of damage to your team. Sadly, the way they currently spawn means you often can't just go around them, as they block the one single path through the level. If you are playing with the AI, you will quickly find them losing all their health to these spiky balls. For me, there should be a rethink on how these things spawn, especially when you are playing with the AI. Again, I would like to add here that the team plan to add more specials during and possibly after early access. One example of this is that we haven't seen the thing that is laying these spiky eggs as yet. Alright, let's talk guns. The game has 3 basic weapons, the SMB, which is an SMG, the plasma rifle, which is an assault rifle, and the blaster, which is a shotgun. You also get a basic pistol as a sidearm. Honestly, they all feel somewhat inaccurate. Their spread seems a little too big, especially the pistol. It's basically a pea shooter that you pull out only when you have no ammo left in your other gun. I found it to be so weak that often, though it is the only ranged option if you are carrying a shotgun, I would sooner try to get closer to ranged targets than try to shoot them with the pistol most of the time, because its damage was just too poor. The SMG type gun was great for dealing with trash and has a high rate of fire, a medium spread, not the best SMG ever, but it does what it says on the tin. The plasma rifle is better sights up and long range, dealing higher damage, but with a higher spread. They're quite similar to be honest, and I kind of wish there was more variation between them. Finally, you get the shotgun. It is a beast at clearing up hordes close range, though it is terrible at long range due to its massive spread. It left me wishing the pistol was better on more than one occasion, but this was the weapon I tended to take when I was playing with the AI, because they didn't seem to take it, and it was just really good at mopping up those big hordes. On top of the main weapons, there are some additional special weapons. One is a placeable automated turret that's great for helping deal with hordes and those big fights at the end of each section of the game. The other two I encountered were more like standard heavy weapons. One was the arc rifle, which shoots electricity that can chain through multiple enemies sort of in a wide area in front of you. This gun has an ammo limit of 30 and can't be replenished. The only option is to pick up a new one to replace it. Finally, there's also a laser rifle, basically a handheld laser cannon that fires a single constant beam. Very high damage for a single enemy such as a brute, but also good for dragging across a room and killing trash mobs, but less effective at dealing with hordes up close perhaps than the arc gun. Again, it only has 30 ammo and can't be replenished. The sad thing about these three special weapons is that you can only carry one. That includes the placeable turret, so you will have to choose wisely which one you take. Though that said, there are so few of these special weapons on the map, it's unlikely you will ever have the difficult decision to make, as each player can take one. My issue was that the AI didn't pick it up when I was playing with them. The good news is the team plan to add more weapons, and I think they need to in the long run to keep things interesting. More primary weapons with more variation, even if it's just a different type of SMG that behaves differently, or a variation that has a secondary ability. For example, a single shot rifle with a chargeable shot that always penetrates and does extra damage the longer you charge it. A bit like having a sniper rifle. Oh, and special weapons wise, please can I have a flamethrower? Pretty please. But the guns and current turret are not the only things in the game that you'll be using against the aliens. You also have a number of grenade types in the game, and initially I worried slightly there maybe were too many, but frankly they all serve a purpose. Again, however, the AI don't seem to use them, so you really need to be playing in multiplayer currently to get the most use out of them. So let's start with the standard stuff. You get an impact grenade. It's your standard explosion type, although it acts more like a Left 4 Dead pipe bomb where there's a beeper and a countdown before it explodes. For me, it should really explode on impact going by its name, but you know, it does what it says on the tin. Next you have your incendiary grenades, which are basically a Molotov cocktail breaking on impact and leaving an area of flames, which the aliens run through and get set alight, including the brute, so you get your towering inferno. So those are your two pretty standard grenades. Then we get on to the more sci-fi ones. The first is the goo grenade, which leaves a patch of purple goo on the ground, a lot like the Goopers green goo. These slow down enemies that walk over them massively, but players are unaffected. The nice thing is the goo lasts for a long time. However, there is a secondary effect to this goo. It lights like petrol does. So you can throw an incendiary grenade in the middle of all the goo, and it goes off like a bigger incendiary grenade and sets on fire everything that runs through it. And that there is a great example of why this game is great in multiplayer. You have one player with goo, one player with incendiary grenades, and utilize them both together. The next grenade I'm going to mention is my favourite one, the stasis grenade. It leaves a huge dome of slowed down time in an area, again affecting enemies. It's fantastic for slowing down a horde or a brute and getting off plenty of shots before they reach you. Then you've got the vortex grenades, also one that I really liked for their effect. It creates a mini black hole, sucking in enemies towards the middle and then exploding after a few seconds. Not as much raw damage as the impact grenade, but the crowd control ability makes it my preferred choice. The final grenade in the game at the moment are the shield grenades. These create a shield dome over an area which most enemies can't get through, including stopping grabbers' tentacles. However, tanks can walk straight through it without issue, so keep that in mind. A lot of these grenades and the special weapons were so much fun to use during gameplay, and knowing when or how to use them was another challenge in itself, and learning new ways to double up the grenades was also great fun, and they could save you from an entire horde when used correctly. I would also like to note the dev team say they plan to add more grenades to the game going forward, much like they're going to add other weapons. Now, one other thing that's in the game, as with the Left 4 Dead games, there are exploding barrels you can carry around with you and shoot to cause a large radius of blast damage to kill enemies. Again, when used correctly, it can make short work of a horde. Now there's one final trick in your arsenal I haven't mentioned yet, and that is the pushback ability. Hitting the shift key will send out a pulse around you, forcing back enemies. This appears to be a replacement for the shove in Left 4 Dead. And then one of the perks in the game also allows you to charge it up and cause it to do damage when it pushes back. But we'll get to talking about the perks shortly. Now there are also healing items in the game. You get a health scanner, which is basically a first aid kit that heals for 80% of damage taken, and a temporary health injection which gives you a boost that slowly drains. Left click to use it on yourself, right click to use it on someone else. Well, that's on the mouse at least. I will note there is also a healing point in the safe room between each section you can use to heal 80% of your damage, like the health scanner, so don't forget to use it when you run in at the end of each level. Now, onto the perks. During the game you're going to come across matter compilers. These units give out perks. Each member of the team can choose one of 3 options, and multiple can be scattered through the levels. Some of the perks are much better than others, but they all give you a benefit of some kind. And also some complement others, so you will want to coordinate with your team. These perks could increase your magazine size, increase the grenade area of effect, so a bigger stasis bubble, yes please. They could also add secondary effects to weapons, such as allowing plasma rifle shots to pass through multiple enemies, basically penetration, or increase the width of shotgun shots. The list goes on and I keep seeing new ones. The selection you get is somewhat random however, so each playthrough can turn out very differently in that respect. Well, we've talked about weapons, we've talked about items, let's talk about the combat itself. It's fast, it's fluid, and it's pretty fun. Clever use of cover, tight spaces and grenades can make all the difference in a fight with a horde, but the AI director was capable of throwing things at you to make you regret your decisions when you got a little bit too comfy. Lovely little corridor to fight a horde in? Well, here you can have a brute that takes up the entire corridor and is charging down it, and then we'll throw in a flasher to blind you while we're at it. Honestly, the AI director scaled the difficulty well overall. However, playing with just the AI became a bit frustrating in some of the big end fights, because you know it's going to be impossible to win, which wasn't as much fun. However, it's like playing a completely different game when you have at least one other human player in the game with you. Working as a team, which is what this game is all about. Doubling up grenade types to maximize their effectiveness, goo grenades down all over the floor and then an incendiary grenade to set them all alight, equals a lot of burning enemies. It feels very much like Left 4 Dead. It has that fun, enjoyable feel to it, even though you're getting your ass kicked. And it's not all about just standing in one place and having a big fight. Episode 2 revolves around you stealing some alien technology and carrying it all the way through the level. However, as a crutch it slowly irradiates you till you have to drop it, so you can't keep holding it and keep running. You have to stop, let it cool down and then pick it up again. Then there are some other objectives where you have to stay within an area to complete one task and then move on to the next. So there's a bit of variety in the gameplay mechanics, a lot like there was in Left 4 Dead. Overall, as it stands, the combat is a lot of fun, but there's a long way to go in development yet. They're going to be adding more weapons, which I think is important to keep things fresh and give you other options. It'll also be nice to see other enemies get added, so that there'll be another element to those combat phases. I want to talk about the AI briefly. The enemy AI is really good. They have clearly learned a lot from the Left 4 Dead games, and the new specials fulfill their roles well. Ranged enemies stay at range, spawners are hiding behind in other corridors, brutes will charge at you and knock your entire team around, splitting you up mid-horde, and for an early access game, the AI is pretty impressive. Though I should note I have seen the brute for example get stuck more than once in a single spot and unable to move, but it's early access so I expect those kind of bugs. The friendly AI on the other hand is not good. It's pretty darn bad at this point. The dev team are aware of that and they're planning to improve it. But just to give an example, they do weird stuff like don't use the healing things until it's too late, sometimes use them when they've hardly lost any health. It's a little bit random. They'll also do things like try and get each other up or get you up when they're getting beaten on by a horde still. So there's no chance of them doing it and then they just die themselves. So there's a lot of work to be done. Now I generally always comment on the graphics and sound, so let's do that next. The game has a really nice aesthetic. I really dig the 60s sci-fi theme and clothing. It stands out as something different, which is not a bad thing. The effects are all well placed and nice to look at. I mean, the vortex grenade is stunning, and the way everything slows down in the stasis grenade is also really cool. The environments look great, though on occasion they are a bit basic in terms of objects or feeling lived in. But then you get to things like the massive garden area with a fake sky ceiling and you are just blown away. So room for improvement, but generally a fantastic start. Sound I have no complaints about at all. Everything works well, the music is good, the warning of the hordes coming, the specials have their little sound so you know that they are approaching, the voices of the characters fit well. I think currently I just wish they spoke to each other a little bit more. but I certainly hope they're going to add more voice lines and more variation in, for example, when they're calling out enemy specials that are appearing. Now I want to add a special mention here for mods, because Stray Bombay are very keen on mods for their game. They are actively encouraging modding teams to get involved already, and they are working on things behind the scenes, and the game will eventually have a mod kit available too. They want to see custom maps beyond what they're offering in the main game's episodes themselves, so there's a lot of scope for the game to expand beyond what they're putting out. So all of that said, what is actually included in the game right now? So it currently has 3 episodes. They are broken up into sections, much like Left 4 Dead was, and the first one of the 3 is the biggest, I think. Then there are plans for 2 more episodes, number 4 and 5, to release soon after the launch phase of Early Access. And the plan during Early Access is to allow testing of new game features, weapons, enemies, and game modes with the community to see what works and what doesn't. The game will also have weekly challenges and a sort of battle pass type system where you can slowly unlock things like cosmetics and emotes, etc. Now the one big omission from the game, and that I haven't seen them mention yet, is anything about a player versus player mode, and honestly it's something I would really like to see. Being able to play player versus player like you could in Left 4 Dead I think will be really fun in this game. So in this section I'm going to cover bits of the game that I and my teammates did not feel worked so well, and maybe need a little bit of extra care and attention. So firstly were weapons. They were a bit too weak feeling, there was not enough feedback when firing, the models were really good, but the way they behaved just didn't feel great. The SMB for example had too much spread. It was the general consensus that it was just as worthwhile using it hipfire rather than down sights, for example. The rifle again had way too much spread and was very weak feeling. Everyone also felt that overall the SMB and the rifle were just too similar in how they behaved, and it was more use taking the SMB because it had more ammo. The shotgun was about right in terms of spread, and it was worth using the aim down sights, but again you could do with a bit more of a punch when you're firing it. The pistol was too much of a pea shooter. It either needs to be improved to be a true secondary weapon, or more pistol options need adding. There's no getting around that. Generally people wanted some kind of melee attack beyond the pulse, so they could actually feel that engagement with the enemies, perhaps even a melee weapon choice. More primary weapons was a repeated request, but these seem to already be planned, so watch this space I guess. Regarding enemies, the Gooper's goop speed needs to be slowed down. It is far too fast as it is capable of locking up an entire team in a matter of seconds. It was also felt that shooting goop clears it off, so then mobs should also knock it off when they hate you, but they don't. There was also not enough feedback when taking damage, in particular when being hit from behind. I'm not sure how to solve that one. More character sounds perhaps? A repeated comment on the maps was that they were really well done and the variety of areas was great, but in general it was too clinical and did not feel lived in. And the final point was the connection to the game and the characters. A proper story and cutscenes will make a huge difference here. Currently it feels rather detached. It's basically suffering from the same issues Back 4 Blood did. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with the Anacrusis. Combat was fun, the setting was fun, and you really had to think at times just how to use your special weapon or grenades to get out of sticky situations. My only regret was that I didn't have a chance to play with other people earlier in my playtime, and that was my own fault for not asking for more keys. However, I really doubt that's going to be a problem once the game launches, because there's going to be loads of people playing it. If you're a fan of Left 4 Dead, then this is most certainly your new spiritual home. Working out how to run episodes and manage the hordes is a lot of fun, and the AI Director 2.0 is very capable of always making it a challenge for even the most experienced players. So if you have friends who enjoy the old Left 4 Dead games, or are happy to play online with randoms, or even organise games on the official Discord, I think this is something you can really get into even at this stage of early access, and help shape the game. As it stands right now, however, if you're going to want to play solo all the time with the AI, then I'd suggest giving it a miss. While it's still enjoyable, the AI just aren't great right now and they need some work in the coming months. But you know, much like Left 4 Dead, this game is best played with other people, and it is genuinely so much fun when you can bounce ideas off each other and come up with some crazy plans to get through a final fight. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this game progresses through early access, as the team seem genuinely passionate about making a game their community will enjoy for years to come. Not just release it and run away, actually make it something that they can keep working on. The Anacrusis goes into early access on Steam on the 13th of January at a price of $23.99 for 1 week, and then it will go up to $29.99. There is a link to that down below in the description. If you're a fan of the Left 4 Dead games, I can really recommend it at that price, as long as you intend to play with other people, or I suppose if you can stomach the friendly AI not being great yet. Anyway, that's the end of the review. Thanks very much for watching. Please hit that like button, do share and subscribe, it really helps out the channel, and I'll see you all again soon for another game review.